In the last episode, we got to square notation, the natural evolution from those squiggly lines, partly shaped by the use of quills and nibs with a broader end. You can't imagine history being shaped by stationery these days, but then again, when was the last time a music manuscript looked as fabulous as this? We also pointed to the collateral damage caused by the necessary simplification of those doodles. As notation moved forward and sight reading took flight, the amount of information that was conveyed had to be trimmed off. And then, in the 13th century, a massive incentive to fix this loss of color, not that there was that much to begin with, appeared in the shape of a fabulous new church house, the Cathedral of Notre Dame.
Things are about to get interesting. Welcome to the storm before the calm.
Notre Dame. This phenomenal new building can't have the same old monophonic menu. And new songs ain't gonna cut it. We need embellishments with capital E. And so, things moved slowly but surely into polyphony. Hang on, how's this relevant to our story? Well, if we're talking, and we are, independent polyphony, by which I mean not a drone and a voice, or a couple of voices in parallel motion, if each voice has a life of its own, we're gonna need a bigger boat. I mean, we'll need a clear rhythmic structure. If your new tune has a voice that doesn't follow the other rhythmically, this needs to be sorted even before you begin writing it down. I'm sure some tried it without having a clear way to notate it, thereby briefly inventing the avant-garde genre. Nutters, visionaries, aren't they the same thing? Others probably tried the easy way out. Why not just simply align the voices? Everyone keeps their eyes on the page, maybe someone moves their hands about a bit, and we glide along together throughout the song. Not really. This still does not tell you anything about note length. You're only sweeping the problem under the rug. And also, this brings back that old familiar issue of how precious space was on a page made of vellum. You can't simply pop down to the shops and buy a new stack of paper. And there were only so many sheep you were allowed to tattoo every year. Actually, because of this, here are a couple of things that occurred frequently. Sometimes, well, a lot of times, the monks had to play Tetris on the page with a part of a motet. Because lining up the lower voice, which usually would have a great deal fewer notes, would lead to a massive waste of parchment, regardless of how skilled you were, making the top voice look like sardines in a tin can. So, most motets would have a layout like this one, which would be useless helping those three independent voices stay in sync if there were no clear note values.
Even worse than that, sometimes the leftover from one voice, if not enough to fill a whole new line, would get shoehorned into the right-hand side of the line below, which now belonged to a different song. By now, we arrive at note shapes that start to look very familiar. Here's a simple animation to show you how those squiggly lines evolved into square notation and the melodic direction it represented. That shape was called a podatus, and you read it from bottom to top. This one a clevis, top to bottom. This one a torculus, up and down. This one a porrectus, down and up. Makes sense, this natural evolution of shapes.
The one we named punctum is now a brevis. You can give it a slight tilt, and it becomes half, semibrevis, half the length of the brevis. The good old virga is now a longa. You can stretch it, and it becomes a duplex longa, twice the length of the longa. Even the names now start to resemble the modern ones. Well, the semibrevis at least. This is going well. This note is half the value of this one, that one double the... Hold on. Just in case you're thinking, this is simple, I've got the hang of it. Let me bring this to the table. Those square shapes have no clean correlation to note length. Their rhythmic values are dictated by context. Yes, I wrote that right. Context. What's the point then, I hear you say? Are we back to square one? Square, huh? Not really. Bear with me. The rhythmic values are dictated by the patterns of a group of notes. Let's see what this means first. In a slightly simplified way, we've got the longa and the brevis. Together, they make a perfectio or perfection, 3 tempore. These people were obsessed with 3, probably with Holy Trinity being top of the list explaining why. Let's call this 3 tempore, I said tempore, 3 half beats. It's close enough and academically acceptable, he says. Now, I could just gloss over this bit, saying it's complicated, which it is. Or I can lift the veil and get us to take a peek at how they read notation 800 years ago. Alright, buckle up, this ride's about to get bumpy. According to Johannes de Garlandia's book De Mensurabilis Musica, there should be about 6 modes.
Here's a quick look at 2 of them. If you see groups of a longa and 2 brevis, longa and 2 brevis, longa and 2 brevis, that will tell you that you are probably in mode 3. And this is how you'll read their note values. But if you see groups of a longa and a brevis, longa, brevis, longa, brevis, that will tell you you're probably in mode 1, and their note values are as follows. But now, look at those 2 brevis on mode 3. Why do they have different note values? They need to form a perfection, 3 half beats. Think of it like a shop that only has size 3 dresses. Everything needs to fit into a perfection. So if those 2 brevis need to form a perfection, one of them needs to get inflated. The rule says it's going to be the second one on this mode. So you'll get 1 plus 2, 3. Also, the Sherlocks amongst you would have spotted that the 2 longas on these modes have different values as well. The one on mode 1 forms a perfection with the brevis, so it needs to shed a third of its value, so they can both squeeze into that size 3. 1, 2 plus 1. Otherwise it'll be 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 4. Nope.
Simple? Don't be obscene. Of course not. But it's doable. And you thought sight reading modern notation was difficult. I'm amazed this thing ever took off.
A very similar method helps us read ligatures, very familiar shapes to anyone coming across music manuscripts. What's a ligature, I hear you say? Ligatures are groups of more than one note written in a single quill stroke, if you're very skilled. All these notes are sung in a single syllable.
These shapes already existed before there was an attempt to write down rhythm. So they probably thought, okay, let's keep them, but they have to mean something now. Once again, their rhythmic value depended on context, the patterns the ligatures formed, which created modes. Again, yes, more modes. Don't judge them.
I won't go into these 6 new modes, you've suffered enough with the previous ones, but it's very similar to what we've encountered before. Groups of ligatures will dictate how their values are read. Well, that and a few more things actually. For example, do they have a stem? Does it point up? Does it point down? Is it an ascending group of notes? Is it descending? What's the shape of the last note? Is it square? Is it oblique? Does it point to the left? Does it point to the right? Yes, I'm sorry, but it was getting too simple again.
Was it? Finally, let's have a quick look at the tenor part from a motet that I've transcribed.
By the way, tenor comes from tenere, to hold, which means the part that held the chant or the part that held the notes for a long time. Take your pick, both might be correct. Look at these 3 ligatures. They seem so different. They must have different rhythmic values, right? Not really. By coincidence, the 3 notes in each represent exactly the same 3 note values. Now take these other 2 3-note ligatures. They are very similar. Surely the note values must be the same. Again, no, because one is ascending and the other one is descending, which means the first 2 notes are respectively brevis and longa, and longa and brevis. Last note is the same one though.
Further complicating matters, these exact shapes, so all these ligatures, appear in manuscripts written in non-mensural notation. The rhythmic values on those mean absolutely nothing. And I think this is enough to chew on for an episode. This was a monumental step towards the music notation we know today. On our next one, we'll get to our final destination. From there, if you squint your eyes, just like magic, modern notation pops up on the page in front of you. Stay well.